But today, instead of encouraging people to talk about their talents and gifts, I think what we kind of want to talk about is just the other side of that, as far as
careful.
To be, like why they're embarrassed or why they don't want to do it is they don't want to get to this point where talents or gifts have become an idol. The collaboration conversation is brought to you by Project Brickworks, the new ministry dedicated to equipping Christians to use their talents and gifts to bring others into a relationship with King Jesus. Project Brickworks is a crowd-funded nonprofit ministry made possible by generous folks like you, and we are so very grateful. We created the collaboration conversation as a way for Christians to share about their upcoming projects and how they are using the talents and gifts that God has given them. Today, we are excited to talk to each other.
Yes. Welcome.
Oh, yes. Thank you to my own house. Welcome to you, to Chattanooga.
Thank you.
For those of you that don't know, our podcast really focuses a lot on guests. Mm-hmm. We're a guest-centric podcast, but every once in a while, we don't have a guest. Not that we don't have a guest, but there are things that we want to say and talk about. And you and I have a very cool, unique relationship. And so I think it's important sometimes to just
chat.
Just chat. Yes. Yeah. And so, today, we are going to be talking about
talents and gifts.
What? Such a shock. We've talked about talents and gifts, obviously, every single podcast. But today we're going to look at it from a little bit of a different perspective.
Yes.
We're normally encouraging folks to figure out what their talents and gifts are and to pursue them and to pray about them and to talk about them. It's funny. A lot of our guests get really embarrassed when it comes time to talk about it.
Yes, it's true.
Give an example of...
Well, I'll give you an example of me.
Yeah.
Our very first episode, you wanted me to talk about it. And I'm thinking, I can't do that. Hello?
Hello?
If I can't do it, why would I think that somebody else could do it? And at some point along the way, we just said, naming it is part of this process.
Yeah.
To say, you know what? God gave me a talent in administration. That's not better or worse than any other talent that's out there.
Totally.
But for me to think in terms of, that's just how my brain works, right? But God wired me that way. It's really funny. In Bible study on Wednesday night, we had a guest teacher. We were talking about how God has ordained, in advance, he has prepared good works for us to be doing. And it just hit me. I mean, it almost felt audible. No one else heard it in the room, I'm sure. But not only has he ordained us for good works that he has created in advance, but he has given us the talents and gifts to do those things
and do them well,
right? He doesn't put
he doesn't not equip us for them.
Oh, totally. But it's with those same talents and gifts.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it was just, I've always loved that scripture, thinking that he has provided good things for me to do in advance. Love that. But he doesn't give me things to do that I'm not only equipped for, but have the talent for. He'll give that to somebody else who he gave that talent to.
Right.
So, So yes, even for me, that was difficult to name, and yet, we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's uncomfortable because it seems unhumble.
Right.
I think that's what a lot of our guests feel, is they feel like, I don't want to talk about myself. And I'm like, right, but it's a podcast and you're the guest. Let's talk about you. It's okay to talk about you.
Yeah.
Because we're giving God the glory.
Amen.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, basically what I'm trying to get at is that sometimes talking about talents and gifts can be tough or exhausting.
Yeah.
And sometimes embarrassing or uncomfortable. But today, instead of encouraging people to talk about their talents and gifts, I think what we kind of want to talk about is just the other side of that, as far as
careful.
To be, like why they're embarrassed or why they don't want to do it is they don't want to get to this point where talents or gifts have become an idol,
right,
so to speak. And so I was inspired to have this conversation by an Instagram post. And so I just wanted to share it and give credit where credit is due. This is from the Instagram for the Church of the City in New York. And this is the what they said. This is their description. What's the called? Whatever.
For their post.
It says, as Pastor Olivia shared on Sunday, it can be easy to start to love and find joy in God's gifts more than the actual giver of gifts. And then they list 7 common idols in the church and in ministry. And two of the ones that they listed were spiritual gifts and calling.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to read real quick what they said about both of those. It's super short. But basically about the spiritual gifts, this is what they said. In the category of ministry, spiritual gifts can become an idol. We can start to love the activity of God and using our gifts to work for God more than loving God himself. One way we can reflect on this is by asking, if my spiritual gift was taken away or if I could no longer be in ministry again, what would God be enough? Wow. Would God be enough?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, that struck me so hard. And this is going to be a very silly example, but I want to give a very small example of kind of what popped into my mind for me personally.
Yeah.
About, 6-ish years ago, I was diagnosed with vocal cord dysfunction and vocal nodules, probably from a lifetime of singing improperly. And I lost my voice for years. It was at least 3.5 to 4 years before I felt comfortable. And even still to this day, my voice is not the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's just from lack of practice and lack of training. And I'm not trying to pursue a career in music anymore. Not that, anyway, you know what I'm saying? Musical theater, things like that. That's just not in my life anymore because I had vocal nodules. Right. So anyway, I remember vividly, I was in Nashville driving home from speech pathology, or, I had to go to physical therapy, yep, massage therapy, speech pathology therapy, all of the stuff for this. It was really intense.
It was.
And it was so life-sucking. Yeah. And so I remember vividly coming home months into treatment. I was driving to my apartment from Vanderbilt, 65 South. I was stuck in traffic. And I remember and I'm going to cry about it, but that's just because I'm a crier. But I remember just bawling my eyes out, thinking that God had taken this talent away.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
And so, and it's interesting because I don't actually use that talent necessarily in a working capacity, right? I'm not a professional singer, but I love to sing.
Yes, and you're very good at it.
Well, I love it.
Yeah.
And just to quote one of our old guests, Becca McDaniel, she had a great story about how sometimes God just gives you a talent for your enjoyment,
yes,
and not necessarily to work with or whatever. And
right.
So this was a talent. This was that talent for me. This was the talent that I enjoyed that I don't know that God ever necessarily intended for me to work with. So in some capacity, in like a professional ministry capacity.
Except that your very first full-length movie was a musical. You sang through the whole thing and had an album.
That's fair. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for negating what I just...
No,
I know. I'm just kidding.
It doesn't negate it because you're right. You're not doing this on a daily basis.
Right. But all that to be said this was a gift that I really loved.
Yes.
And it felt like God had taken it away from me.
Right.
And I remember just being in sorrow over it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I do all of the things that I don't know, I'm going to call them baby Christians, but this is what I do at least. And in that moment, I was mad. I was mad at God. I didn't know what I had done. And now I just have a better relationship with God. And I realize that's not how it works. So it took me a really long time to process this. There was a grieving process. Obviously, now I feel a little bit better. I can sing to some degree.
Yeah, right.
But all that to be said is God, it felt like God had taken that away. And when that talent, I didn't have that talent anymore, was God enough? No. Right?
Right.
I was so upset. And it was more than just upset, and it was more than just because I think that post and what I'm trying to say doesn't allow room for grief and the mourning of not having that talent or spiritual gift anymore. But I really didn't seek my solace in God. I really didn't turn to Him in that,
right,
and give Him honor and glory and praise through it, which is what you're supposed to do. And at least what I am now striving to do through all of the storms of life. And so that was just an example that stuck out to me for my life of a time where I really felt like a talent had been taken away.
And yet I don't have an answer for this. It might be that it wasn't so much that He took it away, but just sometimes things happen in life.
Oh, yeah. And I meant to, at the moment, it felt like he had taken it away.
Right.
Now in hindsight, I don't feel that way anymore.
Okay.
I definitely feel like life just happens and
Right.
I misused my voice and I just didn't have that talent anymore. So I definitely don't blame God anymore, but I did. I totally did.
Right. Well, and part of that is you're brought up, we hear that story in the Bible about the master that left 5 talents with one servant and 2 talents with another and 1 with the other. And the one that only got 1 talent buried it, didn't use it. And when he got back, the master took it away.
Yeah.
And while I don't know for sure that the master is supposed to be God, I think that we all take it that way very often. And it's that idea of when you did something wrong, then he takes it away. It feels punitive when
it's totally not.
It might not even be the case at all.
Yeah.
The good news for you is that you're one of the ones that got 5 talents. So you invested them wisely and you got 5 more.
Yeah.
So good for you.
Thank you.
I
I don't know that that's true,
I
but
know,
I appreciate. I'm not acknowledging it in like a thanks. I'm saying thank you for saying that. Whether or not that's true, I can't confirm or deny.
Right. But you know what I'm saying? It's just that idea of life is hard.
Yeah.
I mean,
Really hard.
hard.
And losing your voice is real. It's the most Disney princess moment of my life.
Yeah, but
Just
still,
kidding.
No, I mean, it's still legit. There's no way to diminish how significant that
Yeah, that sucked.
that time was in your life. You didn't know for sure whether or not you were going to.
It was ever going to come back. I mean, because not only did I have vocal nodules and just lose my voice, was rushed to the ER because I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
My vocal cords were slamming shut.
Yeah.
For no reason. I mean, it was bad. I
really
was
was.
sick. And so anyway, yeah, that was a really tough time. So just to bring that full circle, I guess, is there anything do you have an example that you want to talk about where you kind of feel like a talent or spiritual gift was taken from you or an opportunity to use it?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that there's a number of times when those kinds of things happen, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously I've got 24 years on you.
Something 28. Just kidding.
I have no idea how much older I am than
I
you.
think you're 28 years older than me.
So, I mean, obviously I've lived a lot longer. Somewhat recently, I was let go without cause from a job that I'd been at for 12 years. And we'd been doing I thought we'd been doing a great job.
I mean, the records show that you were doing a good job.
Well, yeah, we were number 1 in the nation in what we do and blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. And that was using, lots of different gifts, but the gift of administration, the gift of management, the gift of encouragement. I was able to use those things on a daily basis. I had folks on the team that I led that would come in and we would talk God. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
straight up, hopefully life-changing. Anyway, it was really the team, the atmosphere. It was a horrible place to work, but our team was really was in sync, and and I got let go right before Christmas. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
how uncool is that? But 3 months later, there's a pandemic. So not only can I not find a job just because I'm in a fairly niche industry, but nobody's working, right? Everybody is at home. And, that's a time, obviously a lot of self-reflection, but, it gets really discouraging when, I've been unemployed for, what is it?
Over a year.
16 months now.
Yeah. Well, and just to speak, I know that you and I like to hindsight things, right? What was God doing? God, you were also trying to buy a house at that time that you would not have been able to afford after you lost your job, right?
Oh, totally.
And we had no idea why your house wasn't selling and why we couldn't get you in something else.
Yeah.
You guys were trying to sell your house for like 6-8 months.
At least, yeah.
It was a long time.
And every door shut.
And
Yeah.
you were beside yourself. And
Yes.
right? So God was closing these doors and you and I are cut from the same cloth. If not, we are the same cloth.
Yeah.
In the sense that just in that moment and we see doors slamming in our face, we're so mad and we just can't see it.
Yeah.
And then later we both are very reflectful and I don't know if that's a word.
Reflective, and very sad that we
And very sorry.
behaved the way we behaved. Yes.
Totally. But God protected you guys.
Oh, he did in so many ways. But I abruptly stopped using administration, stopped using management. I tried not to stop using encouragement. We went online with church, and your dad, as you know, teaches a Sunday school class. So I try to be encouraging through that. But it's very hard. And like what we were talking about, my identity was wrapped up in my job.
Yeah.
My identity, this sounds so weird to say it, but my identity in Christ was even wrapped up in that. The more I was blessed, the things in our department were great. When other departments were floundering and having a lot of trouble, and even the whole agency it just seemed like always in turmoil about something. But, God kind of protected us from that. And we always joked, we just put our heads down and kept working.
Kept doing your job.
And, anyway, but my identity was fully wrapped up in that. And when that was taken, just so, in such a dishonoring and, negative way,
I hear you.
that it took all, 7-8 months. And so it was great in that I had all of that time to reflect.
Yeah.
And all of that time for Bible study.
And you had a lot of time to mourn.
Well, yes. And I didn't have to do it where I was on the run or trying to, anyway, it was a really difficult time. And now I call it a sabbatical. It wasn't planned. Most pastors get to plan their sabbatical, but I didn't. It just was dumped on me. And now I wish I had been able to embrace it sooner.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just that whole idea of when something is taken, because I think now, while I would hate for this to happen, if God took this podcast from us, we'd be like, okay,
yeah,
what's next?
Right.
What are we supposed to do? And we even celebrate closed doors.
Yeah.
Aren't closed doors? Who was I telling this week? Closed doors are so much easier.
So much easier.
It's like, we were telling our associate pastor from our church, he was guest teaching at Bible study on Wednesday. And, the doors close. It's like, okay, well, that was a closed door. That's easy. Let's move on. Let's keep working.
Yeah.
Let's keep knocking.
It's just, we didn't used to feel that way.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Every closed door was the end of the world.
And it was so painful. Ugh. But okay, so you touched on a couple things that I wanna hit on, because there are some points that I think we could talk about. You talked about how your work was your identity. And so we're talking about making a spiritual gift an idol. But I really feel like we can make our gifts and talents and our work our identity. And I have done that since even going back all the way to when I was 11 doing plays and stuff. That's all I did. And that's all I wanted to do. And that's all I focused on. And that's who I was.
Yeah.
I think that there are so many different identities that we give ourselves, right? I'm a daughter. Yes. I'm a daughter of Christ, but I'm also a daughter here on earth. I'm a wife now, which is weird to say, but I'm a wife. I'm a sister. I'm a congregant of my church that I love. I love my church. And if my church somehow dissolved, that would be really, my identity is wrapped in that, in my volunteer role. And my identity has so been wrapped in my work and my productivity.
Oh, yeah. Well,
since I can ever remember.
Because you have to hustle.
Yeah, well, that's true. I do have a job where, I'm a video editor. I've been hustling for the better part of 10 years. And so my identity, all of my time and all of my energy is spent on what's next. And so when you said that a second ago about when we get closed doors, sometimes I think we are just called to be and to rest and to pause. It's hard. It feels endless. You're seeking the next thing, but sometimes you just have to be. And so that's another point that I want to touch on at some point, is just being with God. And sometimes that's enough. We don't always have to be at work for him. Sometimes he doesn't, he's called us to work, don't get me wrong, but that we are called on the seventh day to just rest and be with him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and sometimes that's in the dark.
Oh my gosh.
Right? There's no light at the end of the tunnel, and you're just thinking, and you and I are such planners, right?
Yeah.
I always say I'd rather have a decision made, even if it's the wrong one, than no decision.
At least we have a decision.
Yeah, I don't want to keep my options open.
Totally.
Right? What's the plan?
Right.
And you've done the same thing, right? With when there's no light at the end of the tunnel, we don't know that what's ahead. We've even experienced that. I hope it's all right that I share that.
Sure.
With this, with a film that we've wanted to make, we've taken it to everybody, and just kind of, it's what's hard is that every once in a while there'll be a door that feels like it's open. And so we walk in.
There's a couple doors that we left open.
Well, that's true too. But, just this idea of we think that if we plan well enough, that God should bless it. And it's just not
That's
always
just not the case.
how it works.
Right.
I remember, this is a weird memory, but we were not to name drop, but we were in Sunday school class with Stephen Curtis Chapman, and he was writing a song about God's will. And he was on a plane, I don't remember the whole story, but he was on a plane coming back from Africa, and I think it was the whole family, and he was trying to write this song about God's will. And he told us, he was like, I wrote down what my life plans should be like. And we just want God to go, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of this. Right? This is a great idea.
That's really funny.
You should do
I
that.
just had a really funny visual.
Well, and I'm thinking, while Stephen's talking, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's me.
That's you.
In grad school at Azusa Pacific University, I wrote down a 30-year plan.
I believe it.
It was insanely comprehensive.
I believe it.
Year by year. Do you know how many of those things I've done? Maybe none. I mean, maybe one or two. But I mean...
Hopefully I was on your list.
Well, you were already born.
Oh.
I was in grad school.
Okay, so I was on the list.
Everybody was born.
Okay,
I mean, not
keep me
everybody.
alive.
Yes. But isn't that crazy?
The 30-year list? Yes, it is crazy.
Well,
no, I'm just kidding.
I still have it.
But that idea, Stephen is totally right. I can't even tell you how many times I'm like, this is the best plan. I made the best one.
Yes.
Anyway, that's funny.
You know what? I even think I think that I felt like God was lucky to have me help plan.
Which he's laughing,
Yes.
I hope.
Well, yeah, hopefully.
That's
Right?
so funny. Yeah, I couldn't agree. And couldn't agree more. And I just think it's so, and we've talked about doors opening and closing in other podcasts. And I just think to have the goal, for at least for me, is to have a relationship with God that is just all encompassing. I because I'm human, I'm not sure that I'll ever fully be just totally at ease with everything. That's just not my nature. I'm a very high-strung person. But I want to be able to rely on him and to trust him. And I feel like I've made some miraculous strides in the last few years about that. And just not having to have control, and that his control is always better. His sovereignty and his control is just always better. So anyway.
Well, and what comes along with that, and we've both touched on this a little bit, and you referenced the podcast that we had with Becca McDaniel, excuse me. But it's that idea of constantly being productive, right? If you're not busy doing something, then your worth and your value is diminished.
Oh my gosh, every day of my life, that's how I feel. That's like go ahead.
Well, no, and I just think that there's times when so I was going to get this really important call a week or so ago, and it was I don't want to say life or death. I want to be as dramatic as I can possibly be without saying that.
But it was important.
It was a very important call, and a lot was writing on it.
That's fair.
And I was being as productive as I've ever been. I mean, I was killing it. And then I stopped. I mean, I was frozen with kind of a panic and you were
when they called?
When I was waiting for the call.
When you were waiting for the call. When you found out that they were going to call.
Yeah,
you got a preemptive email that they were calling.
That they're going to call in 4 hours.
And then you couldn't move.
I couldn't breathe.
Yeah. But remember, I told you.
And you did. That's what I was going to say. You're like, just rest. Just figure. And I binged some kind of really new talk show that was really super funny. And then I didn't get the call.
And then you didn't get the call?
I didn't get the call until the following week.
I know.
Kill me now.
It was at least 48 hours later. Maybe 72.
It was at least.
It was like 4 days later.
But it was okay. You gave me permission, and which God's been giving me permission all along, and I just don't listen very well. But it's that idea that I don't have to be, let me finish that sentence. I don't have to be productive all the time. Your dad and brother went to visit Granny and Papa over spring break. And I gave myself a goal.
To do 500 things.
500 items to check off of a to-do list. And I did it.
I mean, that's great.
No!
But like...
What's wrong with me?
I don't... As soon as you find out, let me know, because it's also wrong with me. And it unfortunately causes burnout for me, at least. I don't ever find that I've ever seen you just get burnout.
No, not super much.
Yeah, and I get burnout all the time. And I think it's just because of this.
Well, yours is right now at least more tied. Your hustle's tied to income.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
You are on a sabbatical.
So, hopefully I'm off of it. we're trying to start a ministry.
Well,
and
I know
all that
that's
kind of stuff.
true.
But I don't know. The lesson that I learned after trying to do 500 things, which just in case you missed it, I did
she
it.
did it. she has to let you know she did it.
Is that the next week I gave myself 12 things to do.
Yeah.
I didn't finish them all.
Yeah.
Which is how weird is that doesn't bother me. I was able to finish them over 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah.
But things just came up. So,
well, just I don't know if this is necessarily a perfect segue, but what that reminds me of is our missions, or part of our core values at Project Brickworks, our ministry, which is to seek the balance between work, home, and rest.
yes.
And it's such a good goal. It's such a good core value. Notice we put that we're going to seek it.
Yeah. And it's last.
And it is also listed
No, I was
last. No, but you and I just really struggle with that. And I know
Yes.
we're not alone. I know that there are people out there who struggle with this as well, especially in this time where the world is on fire. At least that's how it feels. And so I just want to encourage people to seek that balance. Even right now, I'm in therapy. I highly recommend therapy to anybody, to you, to everybody.
I need it.
I'm in therapy right now, and I just started seeing a new therapist, and we're only like in our 4th session. She was like, "You have a hard time saying no, don't you?" And I was like, "It's that obvious." So we're working, I'm working with her on how to say no, and I've been practicing that with once I hit a certain amount of hours, like that. This is how much you've paid me for. That's it. And so,
thank you for the opportunity to work overtime for free.
Yeah, I'm
But
not
no.
going to take it. Yeah. And that's just been part of my life. I have been a hustler. I've worked for startups. I don't know if you remember that there was a season where I was working for a startup for this. There was like 3 people in this startup. It was me and 2 other people. And I worked my butt off all day, every day, at all hours. I was just constantly working. And I think that really shaped, unfortunately, my work ethic as an adult now. And that's all I do. I just have to keep going, and I have to keep being productive.
And if you're not, you feel guilty.
I feel massively guilty.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen very often because I always meet my deadlines. Just kidding.
Well, no, what I meant was if you take some time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I feel horrible. Saying no is the worst.
Yeah.
I hate saying no.
Or even we try really hard to not work ever on Sundays. That's our Sabbath day. But
I feel really guilty about it.
Right.
Think about how many hours I just wasted that I could have been working. I think of how much work I could have gotten done. It happens to me every week. So I've got to get better at that.
God has called you
to rest.
To Sabbath.
I know.
It's not even a 11th consideration. It's part of the 10 Commandments. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's crazy.
Yikes.
That's how important it is.
You really
Sorry.
nailed that one in there for me. I feel really bad now.
I'm not telling you. I'm telling others.
I know.
Because we have a mutual friend, who would tell you that we're wrong. Every moment needs to be about making money, about hustling, about productivity.
Yeah.
And God calls us into, and it really needs to be a time where it's not just you're not doing anything. You're not, watching TV all day. It's worshipful. It's, for us, it's Sunday. So that includes church.
Matt, our pastor, quoted somebody, which is terrible. I'm gonna have to go figure out who the quote is and give credit where credit is due, because I don't know who said it. Maybe I'm gonna sound like an idiot. Maybe it's like a really well-known quote, and I'm gonna butcher it. But he was talking about how when you Sabbath, there's like 2 types of people. There's like active people and cerebral, like working labor people, and then like cerebral, studious people, if you will. And when you Sabbath, you're supposed to not do those things. Okay. So if you have a job, he gave himself as an example. He said, I'm in the Word. I'm a pastor all week. That's what I do. So when I was Sabbathing and just spending that time reading the Word, it felt like work.
Yes.
And so for people like that, they need to go do something, not turn their brain off, something.
Go for a hike.
Yeah, something. Yeah, that's great.
Enjoy nature.
Yeah, and then for
God's
people like
nature.
us who are more work, productivity, goal oriented, we need to turn the goals off, put the to-do list away, and kind of rest. Yeah. And do something like read a book. You love read. It's not what I'm going to do, but that's what you could do.
Yes, I could do that.
Anyway.
You could do it if
I
you
could
just
do
tried.
it if I did. Yeah, if I tried.
Well, or spend some time in relationship.
Yeah, totally.
For a newlywed, for you to be with your husband.
Yeah.
I know that, This is so bad. I get up in the morning and I work until about 4:30. Dad comes home, hang out. Sometimes we watch Jeopardy, which sounds so old people-ish, but anyway.
It's okay.
And then I'll test the waters to see if I go back to work.
Yeah.
And I can work again from 7 to midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And one time and he's so not a demanding person. And one time I said something like that. He goes, "This is my time." And I'm thinking,
Aww.
okay, yes,
Nick
I'll stay
does
here.
that too. That's so cute. He's like, "Do you want to go back to work?" I work.
I know. Well, you work more than I do.
No, I'm not. We're not. It's not a comparison. I'm with you. I work all the time.
So anyway, Sabbath is just critical in this life balance. I have a friend, I've told you this before, but I have a friend who's got this down, and I'm sure she feels like she could do more, but she homeschools. So every day, the 7th hour of the day, she and her kids Sabbath.
Oh, wow. Every day.
And then they Sabbath once a week on the 7th day. And then they Sabbath every 7 weeks for school. So their breaks don't align with like the public school for fall break and spring break.
That's really cool.
And they take a week off of school. She might have something for the 7th month. I don't know. But
that's pretty spectacular.
Yeah. So the 7th hour of every day, they take an hour the kids are allowed to read or to go outside and enjoy nature, or, maybe watch a TV show about nature or something, but there's no working. There's no,
That's cool.
It doesn't count for their report cards or whatever, however else they're motivated. But I mean,
that's spectacular.
It is. I don't know that I could have done it.
No, I can't do that.
Sorry.
Yeah. But that's very cool. Yeah. I love that. So I just to bring that point of Sabbathing and resting full circle, I think it's what I was trying to get at is that sometimes God doesn't want us to work, and sometimes he just wants us to be with him.
With him, yes.
And so I think that's really important.
Well, and that even plays into what we started talking about with our talents and gifts, with our calling.
Calling is where I was heading next.
Okay, well, and those things have to just be in him.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good of an actress you are if you're not doing it for his glory.
Yeah.
Because he gave you the talent specifically so that you will please him, and in turn it
and point others to Jesus.
Well, yeah, amen. But just it edifies you.
Right.
When you're doing it for him, it never feels bad.
Yeah.
Right. A no is just okay. Well,
great. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. And so that's a good segue to talk about callings, which I think can go hand in hand with spiritual gifts and then talents as well. For me, I integrate them. Not everybody necessarily. I mean, part of the podcast is encouraging people to use their gifts and their talents in their work, but sometimes they're separated. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, they're not, but yes. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, no, but yes.
No matter what your job is, you're still using some of your gifts, right?
Totally.
But to think of them as a calling gives it kind of a higher,
it's a passion.
Yes.
There's an emotional element to it. So I think going back to that post, they had a post about the idol of a calling, and so this is what it said.
Good.
And we're going to talk about this in relation to Project Brickworks too, because I think that's important. Does your cause matter more to you than the God who called you? Do you have a passion for justice or a certain initiative, but it actually takes your heart more? But it actually takes your heart more than God. If so, your calling may have become an idol. And I think that's so, man, that one hits me pretty hard because I just feel like I'm so calling driven. My whole life I've been calling driven. And I think sometimes I do forget the person who put that calling there, who called me to the calling. And I don't put him first sometimes. Sometimes my calling is in the forefront of my brain for weeks, months at a time. Yeah. And anyway, what are your...
Well, so that idea of if it was taken away, would you be okay?
We said this earlier, if Project Brickworks was taken away or if this podcast was taken away for whatever reason, would we be okay?
And I think the answer is yes. It wouldn't.
It would be easy.
But that's new.
That's new. That's a line from a Disney movie, in case you're wondering.
Oh, yeah, I had no idea. You know what I'm saying? So we started a ministry in the middle of a podcast.
Pandemic.
Sorry.
I knew what you meant. We started a ministry in the middle of a pandemic.
Yes. Sorry. You want to start
No,
again?
keep going.
Anyway, we started a ministry in the middle of a pandemic in so many ways that just doesn't make any sense. And we've been doing this now about 4 months. So it's super new. But it's been very life-giving.
Very.
Very, for me, out of a season of very, where I lacked hope, very hopeful. And I would be pretty upset if for some reason he just came down and said, "I'm sorry, you can't do this." And it would take me a while to mourn it because I think we're both very invested now.
Yeah. But I think mourning is okay. But I think the point is that you and I would not give up.
Right.
And my hope is that you and I wouldn't immediately go seek, because we said this earlier, which I'm asking what your thoughts are on if this is counter to what we're trying to say here. But that like you and I would immediately say, okay, well, what's next? And I think the point, you know what I'm saying? I think the point is that there doesn't have to be anything that's next. I think the point is God is God, and that needs to be enough. Is it enough? We're human. No, it is, right? Right. It is enough. But emotionally, it doesn't feel enough sometimes. And I want to get to that spot where it is. I think there are some people, we spoke, I don't know, however many weeks ago with Marcus from
Reach One.
Thank you. And I think it's enough for him.
Oh, yeah.
He was awesome. But as he's sitting there talking about all of these obstacles and things about how his identity is not tied in what he's doing anymore, like he's figured that out. I have not figured that out. And so I hope that's encouraging to people who haven't figured it out. And I hope that people who have figured it out will give me a call.
Yeah.
So tell me how to do it.
No, I totally agree. And just to be able to, I don't know, having had everything professionally ripped from me recently.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, you know what my goal would be? To have the mourning process a little bit shorter.
That's fair.
You know,
that's fair.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where I can say, God, this really hurts, and this is really hard for me.
Show me.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people, us included, I mean, go back to our podcast on failure and sway. You and I, in that season, our calling was ripped away from us.
Yes.
And we did not sit there and say, God, this hurts. This is really painful. Show me what you're doing. Tell me what you want me to do. Again, I don't think he's always calling us to do something. He could just be calling us to be with him.
Yes.
But, we didn't do that. That's not the approach we took. And so my hope is that is the approach that we would take if something were to happen and we weren't able to do this together anymore.
And I think part of that is the world tells you that successful people persevere. You get right back up on the horse, whatever that's going to look like.
Pivot.
Oh, yes. Yes. But we are so driven and such strong women that I think we thought, oh, this is an obstacle for us to overcome. Right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
And
it was a closed door.
I mean, it was a closed door. It couldn't have been more
We thought
closed.
it was like a little hurdle, and it was just like this huge it was like the Wizard of Oz. It was the door into Oz. It was massive, and it just closed.
But we dug our heels in, and we pushed harder.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead, and we've just learned so much in that 10 years to be able to say,
true.
okay, if that's not the direction we're headed, that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
Just help us have faith. And again, faith is a spiritual gift for you. It's not for me. It is for me. It's not as strong one as it is for you. But just to think, if everything was taken away, and I've had this thought in the last year, will I be okay? Yes. And what does this all boil down to? All of it. And that's why we started Project Brickworks. It's all about identifying, kind of in general, which talents and gifts are that God has given you.
Uniquely.
Yep. And using those to build our brick for God's kingdom. Because this is all about evangelism. It's all about sharing the good news of Jesus. And we do that through stories. That's how he did it. The Bible is one big, long story about Jesus.
Yeah.
Before Jesus, with Jesus, and then after Jesus, right? It's all we're supposed to be doing in our life is pointing people to Jesus.
Yeah.
And we have a limited amount of time to do that. I think we really would like to do that through storytelling, through filmmaking. when you and I
in this podcast.
in this podcast,
We didn't know that that's what
when you and I started Project Brickworks, I don't think podcast was on the list of
it wasn't.
campaigns.
It sure wasn't.
And it's the first one, and it's crazy. I would tell you that neither one of us ever wanted to do this.
Right. Totally.
But it kind of grew on us.
Yeah.
I mean, I did start thinking, well, maybe I need to do some kind of podcast thing, a year ago. And you're like, well, when are you going to invite me to join you? And I'm like, I didn't think you'd be interested, right?
Yeah.
That's all God.
And then I was like, you want to make a video one? And then you kicked
went,
me
"No."
out. And I wasn't invited anymore.
Why would I do a video one? It's like, there's a reason people are in radio, right?
Right.
But anyway, but God's good.
Oh, amen. And yeah, so all that to be said is I think everything that we're doing is important. I'm not, right, we're not making a podcast that's talking about the negative side of talents and gifts to diminish what we're doing or whatever, but I just, identifying talents and gifts is so important. Knowing how you can use them for God's glory and to point others to Jesus is so important.
And I love the part that we want to do this. I don't know that we've had a whole lot of opportunity yet, but it's happening, is to connect other believers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Because our bricks can't be bricks by themselves.
No, that's true.
God's using your brick and my brick and Marcus's brick and
everybody's
Becca's brick and
Yeah.
everybody's brick as he's building his kingdom.
Totally.
And all of that is ushered in the resurrection of Jesus. And if we just keep that in mind, things will balance. Home and life and rest.
Totally.
I think.
And I think to get there, it's important to take stock of all of these things, to take stock of, honestly, I need to make a list of what I find my identity in.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I think that I don't think it's meant to be painful. I don't think I want to be like, oh, well, what if I wasn't an earthly daughter anymore? I don't necessarily know that I need to, sit in that. That's sad. But I do need to take stock in what I find my identity in addition to being a daughter of God, and figure out how
prioritize.
I don't even know that it's prioritized. I don't think I need to have my identity in any of those things. I think that I would be a far better Christian, a far better child of God, a far better everything if my identity was not tied in my work. It affects every aspect of my life negatively, that my identity is found in my work.
Right. But what I meant by prioritize is when you write those things down, then you can say, you know what, I do need to spend more time with my husband, because being a wife, a brand new wife.
Oh, yeah.
That is a really great place for me to put my identity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's just places where it's not a bad thing.
Okay, so kind of. Well, let me ask you this. This is a little bit, not to cause like a disagreement,
push back.
But I'm kind of under the impression that my identity doesn't need to be in anything other than being a daughter of God. But you're saying that you can have multiple, but just as long as they're prioritized well.
Right. And I'm not going to argue that with you, right? Yes, you're right. Being a child of the King trumps everything.
But you're saying, but I'm not opposed to it. I'm just asking you, and then you're saying that you can have other ones.
Right. Well, he's given you those other identities. He's given them to you. He matched you with Nick.
Well, that's true.
He brought you two together. He doesn't want you to.
I'm okay with being wrong.
No. It's not a wrong. It's just, let's just talk this through. It's this idea of, you know what? God's first.
Yeah.
But then when the world comes at me, Nick's next.
Yeah.
Right? We got to figure out what we're going to align with, what we're going to spend time with.
Yeah.
I really shouldn't bring this up, but you, because you love me and Dad and Bo, want us to move down here so badly. And we would like to. Right? Down here, we're in Chattanooga. We would love to, right? But we have a really rich and thick life where we're at.
With no grandchildren.
I don't have any grandchildren yet. When those little
ones,
pipsqueaks
pipsqueaks
show up, then it's a whole different conversation. I have no idea what that's going to look like. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would love to move down here. But, I mean, my best friends right now, except for you, are up there. How am I going to leave them?
See, but to me, your identity is my mom, and that's it.
and while that would be a nice fantasy, it's just not reality.
It's a fantasy.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
I'm joking.
And I know, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
He does give us identities.
Okay.
We're-
I accept that. I think I came into this thinking that I needed to get rid of all of my other identities.
Yeah.
And I really just need to make them lesser than my true identity.
Well, and there are some, you're the one that brought up this topic. There are some that are toxic, right?
Oh, yeah.
And things that are out of balance. You are totally right on that.
Yeah.
I just don't know that we can, well, that's not true. You can get out of balance with your identity with your husband.
Oh, totally. And I think that's not a toxic one.
Right.
Currently. Sorry, you made me lose my wording, and that was interesting. Sorry. I'm going to go back.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to say is everything in our life can be out of balance. I don't think right now having God first, maybe your church, your husband, those kinds of things secondarily are bad, right?
Right.
Having work higher than it needs to be is where it can get out of balance.
Yeah.
Maybe even toxic.
Totally. Yep. I would concur with that. I can get behind that.
Yeah. Because we do have identities. We do have identities as friends and sisters and mothers and, all of these things.
But the idea is that if all of those were stripped away, what's at your core? What's at the bottom? Bottom meaning the top. Like, what's the foundation?
Yeah. And that's God.
And that's God. And that's being a child of God.
And so what do we do with that? We're in his word.
Yep.
We're praying. We carve out time to just talk to him. And, one of the things that has happened is that this ministry really has been born out of you and I praying together for almost 2 or 3 years. Every single day we made a commitment to pray together.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And I think I just wanted to add to that is being a disciple.
Oh, amen.
And pursuing that. I mean, that's the Great Commission. And so I think pursuing discipleship. I think community is important. I think community can also become an idol, which that's a whole nother topic. But I think community is important, but I think being disciples is really important.
Yeah.
And is part of that identity.
Part of our worship, I think, when we're in the Word and when we're praying, has got to be Thanksgiving, because at least I don't count my blessings. I'm always looking for the next thing. I think you do that too. What's
next?
What's the next thing? And I think I've even said this on the podcast. I worked at a Catholic college, and one of the sister that I worked for, she was the president of the college. We had a great year. We met all of our goals and probably exceeded them and added, all these new students and new programs. And I'm at a party to celebrate, talking to her about what next year's goals are. And she goes, "You don't celebrate well, do you?" And I'm like, "No."
What's next?
I said, "Oh, no, I'm looking to next year. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the plan." And she said, "Even if you don't need that to stop and celebrate, to stop and rest, to stop and reflect, your staff does.
Yeah.
You need to go and be grateful. You need to not talk to them about what the next year's goals are next week." Oh, that was huge. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Unfortunately, you and I both do that. Yes. And so in this ministry, as we are a baby ministry, we're less than a year old, but as we grow and as we mature, and I hope that you and I are able to make that change for each other as well. Yeah. As for those that we're going to connect with and work with. So
we'll see.
Well, yeah, I hope. Lord willing, we'll pray about it and just ask him to have mercy.
Yeah, we need it. It's just what has been transformative and eye-opening is the people that God has brought into our path for the podcast that we never had thought of before.
Mm-hmm. Or knew of.
I mean, I've never even listened to a podcast before this.
I don't know that you should admit that.
No, well, I have since we started.
Yes.
I've had to do that.
Fair.
But I'm not an audio person. I'm a video person.
Right.
I mean, I'm a visual person, excuse me. So I'll watch a movie, that kind of thing. But the idea of listening, kill me now. Unless it's music. Totally listen to music all day. But think of these people we would have never met.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, to use your word, it's life-giving.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's not my word. I mean, I use it a lot, but
no, you coined it.
I did not.
Look it up in the dictionary.
I didn't. I won't.
Anyway, it's just it's absolutely beyond our ability to imagine that God could have done something so fabulous and that we didn't think of it.
Yeah.
We
totally.
Really,
He downloaded it to us.
I guess.
Cool. Well, anything else? Any other final thoughts? I feel like that was
a great conversation.
A little bit all over the place, but a good conversation. Yeah. I think it's just important to reflect on, especially when our ministry puts so much emphasis on a specific thing like talents and gifts, that we're taking check of who gave us those talents and gifts, who calls us, who gives us the calling.
Yes.
And so I wanted to make sure that we took time in our podcast schedule to do that and to give him honor and to thank him and to remember that he is our identity and nothing else. He's the foundation.
So important. You're right. I'm glad you thought of all this so that
I didn't think of it,
that we could talk about it. It really was totally your idea.
Just to wrap up, I just want to encourage people. If you don't know what your talents and gifts are, we have an assessment on our website that you can take a look at, projectbrickworks.org. But also, there's so many talents and giftings assessments out there. We want you to. This isn't to diminish the importance of them. It's just to make sure that they're in the right order of importance.
Yeah, and balanced. And
so I just hope that this is encouraging and not discouraging. That's the only word I could think of. But I don't know. It was kind of a tough conversation, but I hope people are inspired to take stock of where they put their hope and their identity and their worth.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm working on every day. I have not gotten it down. Yeah. I definitely struggle with it. And so
I'm with you.
Yeah. So we're working on it.
Well, so this is a tandem idea that we really weren't planning on talking about. But one of the things that at least I get asked is, what is your ministry all about or whatever? And and it's just really funny. It feels really defined to us and we know what we're supposed to be doing. But to be able to communicate that to other people, I guess, is something that we're working on. And it's just this idea of being cognizant of your talents and gifts and how you're using them for God's kingdom. We're trying to build God's kingdom. So this ministry is all about evangelism. It's all about sharing the good news of Jesus. And I wasn't planning on doing this either, but we can't do it without you. We, we're both trying to hustle other forms of income so that we can do this. We are trying to fund scholarships. We are trying to work on a workbook. There's all of these things, and we need your prayer support. We are looking for volunteers. We need people to run our social media ministry outreach, whatever that looks like.
There's so many opportunities to get involved in volunteers in so many different hourly capacities. Even if you only have a few hours a week, we have something that you could be doing. And if it's in your giftings and your calling and your talents, I mean, come on, let's go. Yeah. Like, that's what we're all about.
Well, and we're also looking, this sounds so weird to say this out loud, but we're looking for people who will align with us monetarily. We could use your donations. And I mean, I know because we've been donating to missionaries my whole entire adult life monthly. So without what we send to these missionary families, they wouldn't be able to do what they do. And so we're looking to build that kind of a foundation for our ministry of folks who will align with us monthly as well. So it's weird to say all of that, but that just was on my heart right now.
Yeah.
We can't do this without you guys. And what we're doing, we hope will just continue to grow and that the reach that we have God will exponentially bless it as we partner with more of you folks out there, because we're all doing this together, right? We're all sharing the good news of Jesus. And there's lots of good ministries out there that you can align with. But anyway, I just wanted to share my heart with you on that. So,
well, thanks, Mom.
So, So for more information on Project Brickworks and how you can get involved, visit us online at projectbrickworks.org. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter, like our Facebook page. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and turn on notifications. If you're listening to this on a podcast, please subscribe and be encouraging with your rating, please. We love you all. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.